to look at verse 21. That's where we're going to start. This morning what we're talking about is satisfying our greatest needs. You know, I'm excited. Really excited about this message. I can't tell you how God has worked in my life all week long with this message. Because what we're going to investigate is how you can have your greatest needs satisfied. I promise, before God, that if you will open your heart this morning, you'll learn how to have your needs, your greatest needs, satisfied from what we're about to learn. Mark lays this story out. We're going to look at 3 different people in need of having their needs satisfied, their greatest needs satisfied. Now, these stories are in the other Gospels and they have more detail, but Mark lays them out and they're to be considered together because they represent all of us. You see, if you're here and you say, well, preacher, how can you promise that my greatest need, you've got the answer for that this morning. You don't know what it is. Well, Mark covered you. There's a whole selection of humanity here, and that's why he added all these stories here together. You know, it's been incredible to see God work in my heart this week with this sermon. I told you we were going to Winston-Salem for a wedding. One of my dear friends I haven't seen or talked to in 6 or 7 years came up to me in tears after the wedding and began to weep. I haven't seen him in that amount of time. And when I last saw him, I knew, even though we were friends, you know how we are in church, we're friends, and everybody's an arm or 2 a length apart. That's a terrible way to live. It's a terrible way to do worship and live. But I knew then there was something going on in his life. I knew he was searching for something. And he came up to me and he said, you know, I need to call you and start calling you again. And I need to talk to you on a regular basis. And I was like, well, sure. What's going on? He said, I've been clean for a year. But see, he was a deacon in our church. He was his kids we raised our kids with his kids. But he'd been going all this time and still hadn't had his greatest need met. He had religion down. He had the wife, the kids, the job, the house, you know, all the things that we go to first to have our greatest needs satisfied. They didn't do it. And so it started over an injury, doctor prescription, and finally he said before his wife caught him lying to him and stealing and all these other things, he was at heroin. And he said, it's been a year. I got my year coin, he said. And he said, you know, it all was because he was trying to scratch that itch with something other than what's required to have your greatest need met. So when you look and you listen today as we go through this, I don't know where you are in life, but I know that today God wants to meet your greatest needs. So let's read what Mark says. And remember, these stories, Mark doesn't separate them. He brings them together. Because he's showing us, he's speaking to us, sharing with us what Jesus wants to do, which is meet our greatest needs. So let's begin there in verse 21 and we'll go through verse 45. Mark says, and they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath, he entered the synagogue and was teaching. And they were astonished at his teaching. You ought to bring your Bible so you can underline, because that word astonished, it's the key. It's the key to what you're searching for. And it says they were astonished at his teaching. Wouldn't you like to know and hear Jesus' teaching? You're going to today. I promise. Not me, but I'm going to share with you what it would be like. I'm going to describe for you exactly what it would be like to sit under the teaching and the preaching of Jesus. And I'll show you how. They were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority and not as the scribes. And immediately there was in the synagogue a man with an unclean spirit. And he cried out. You know what the irony of all this is? There was a demon-possessed man in church. You see, Mark crafts that so you understand He was a regular. He was a member. Okay? And immediately there in the synagogue, a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us?" Interesting how the devil always twists the intentions of God and the truth of God. Jesus didn't come to destroy us. He came to save us. I know who you are, the Holy One of God. But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying out with a loud voice, came out of him. And they were amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, "Who is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." And at once his fame spread everywhere throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee. Now notice, the story continues with Mark. He wants you to see this. And immediately he left the synagogue and he entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with fever. Now everyone assumes, as I've heard this taught, what a godly woman she was, and so on and so forth. See, I knew. Godly, mother-in-law, they don't equal, right? Don't be scared, boys. All right. But the point is, she is a good moral woman. But what Mark has added to the story, he wants you to understand that morality doesn't lead to satisfaction. And so here was Simon's mother-in-law as she lay with fever, and immediately they told him about her. And he came and he took her by the hand, lifted her up, and the fever left her. And she began to, underline, serve. That evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick or oppressed by demons. And the whole city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many who were sick with various diseases. He cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. And Mark goes on. Here's another section of humanity. He says, "And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place. And there he prayed, and Simon and those who were with him searched for him, and they found him and said to him, 'Everyone's looking for you.' And he said, 'Let us go on to the next town.'" Jesus, all these people that have needs, they've come. And Jesus said, "All right, boys, let's go to the next one. That I may preach there also." Boy, I'd underline that phrase. "For that is why I came out." And he went throughout all of Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. And here is the most distraught, the one with the worst condition. "And a leper came to him, imploring him, and kneeling said to him, 'If you will, you can make me clean.'" Now, I want you to, that's important, okay? Here's a man that has no hope. And he's thinking, how can I get Jesus? Have you ever been in such bondage that you thought that for some reason God loved this one, but He didn't love you? Have you ever been in such a shape that you thought, why is it that God moves in their life and He won't move in mine? And that's where this guy was. He didn't have any hope. And I want you to read this. I'm not making it up. You read it. He comes and he says, "Jesus, I'm not worthy. I'm not valuable. I know that. I've come to accept that. But if you will, you can make me clean." In other words, I have no other hope other than you, God. Moved with compassion, He stretched out His hand and He touched him and He said to him, "I will be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him. That's incredibly important. He was made clean, and Jesus sternly charged him and sent him away at once and said to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses," hint, hint, Moses commanded for a proof to them. But he went out and he began to talk freely about it and spread the news, so that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, but was out in desolate places, and people were coming to him from every quarter. Now, I promise you that if you'll open your heart to the Spirit of God this morning, that God will reveal to you how to have your greatest need satisfied. But here's what I want you to think with me for a second. My concern is that most people never have their greatest need satisfied because we never address their greatest need. Because most of you don't know what your greatest need is. Knowing Jesus. Do you understand the intimacy of the word knowing? Not knowing about, not heard of, but intimately knowing Jesus is the answer to our greatest need, no matter what the need is. Okay? So I want us to dive into this because Mark reveals to us. He puts these stories together. I don't care who you are, where you're from, what's your history, your background, your situation. Mark has included us all through these series of this demon-possessed man, the mother-in-law, and then the man with leprosy. That's the whole spectrum of humanity. You have the religious, you have the moral, and the wicked. That's it, brother. That's all of us, right? The first thing I want you to see is our greatest need is to hear the words of the Master. You know, I've noticed that I can sit down and I can begin to teach somebody, or it doesn't matter if it's changing in time. I can teach you how to change your time, but if you don't listen and learn, you're in deep trouble when you get a flat, when you're not with my presence. Do you follow what I'm saying? I'm saying that I've noticed that I can tell you what you need to know, but if you don't like it, we have a tendency to flush it right out the other side, right? You're like, oh yes, I want that. I want to be whole. What am I going to do, preacher? Well, you need to do this, and this. And then you walk out and you're like, oh, what did he tell you? Ah, you're stupid. That ain't going to help me. Right? Our greatest need is to hear the words of the Master. That's our greatest need. And here it is. Here it is. Here's your greatest need. Write this down. We need to understand His holiness and our depravity. Until you can understand His holiness and your depravity, you will never, ever see real transformation and freedom in any area of your life. I want you to think with me for a second. What would it have been like if you ever sat down? I've done this many times. Have you ever sat down and said, man, I wonder, I would have loved to sit and listen at the feet of Jesus? Let's be honest. How many of you have done that before? You might have thought I was planning to preach like Jesus or for Jesus this morning. No, no. I'm going to describe for you very accurately what it would have been like. Because I've heard so many preachers get up and say, well, listen, buddy, this is what Jesus would have preached like. This is what He would have done. This is His demeanor. But Mark says, look, I don't have to guess. I'm going to tell you. Mark's going to describe for us exactly what it was like to sit under Jesus. I mean, think about it. You see what's going on here? It was their tradition in that day that the visiting rabbi, he was the guy who would speak. So everybody got up. Remember I told you I was excited to see you this morning? I've been excited all week to worship. No, I was not real thrilled. Nobody was like excited in my house for all of that this morning. But can you imagine? You're like, oh man, I can't wait to get to church this morning. And you roll in, and here's Billy Graham's grandson. Or David Jeremiah, or whoever is your favorite preacher. That's kind of what it was like. They all were going their way to church that morning, and boom, there was Jesus. And He had come to share with them that morning. I mean, can you imagine how exciting it would have been? So what would it have been like to hear Jesus? The key, and the way that I'm able to tell you what it's like to sit under and know how Jesus preached is in verse 22. Remember the word I told you to underline? Astonished. Now, I know what all of you think. You're like, well, what does that mean? Because in that word, our English language is limited, but the Greek is not limited. In the Greek, Mark describes exactly what it was like to sit under. He describes the emotions of sitting under when Jesus preached. Now, I know what you're thinking. Boy, I wish he would astonish us. You know, I hear people all the time say, man, preacher, sometimes when you preach, I feel guilty. You know what we learned in our new members class this morning? That conviction, it is a blessing of God. Huh? What? Go study the Bible. I think it's Hebrews 4:12. The Word of God is sharper than a two-edged sword. It cuts coming and going. It cuts both ways. But it heals as it cuts. You see, it spiritually cuts us to cut away the spiritual cancer. I told them this morning the story of my wife's grandfather. It's kind of like skin cancer. You know, I'm always out in the sun. I'm always looking. And as soon as I see, I'm like, oh, you know, because Sherry's grandfather had skin cancer come up on his head. And what did he do? He ignored it for years, didn't he? Until the cancer grew into a cone on top of his head. You see, at the first sign of the cancer, if he'd gone and had it taken off, he would have lived many more years. But because he ignored the warning, it robbed him and the family of a lot of years and memories. You see, conviction is a blessing of God. When you're saved, the Holy Spirit lives within you, and what He does is He is convicting you of something that will spiritually devastate you. So what's that got to do with Jesus' preaching? Because see, when I hear people say, boy, sometimes when I hear you, I feel so horrible. You're always so negative. And I want to say, yeah, but the other 12 people that came out in front of you, they were so excited. They were on fire. It was a blessing to them. It's kind of like there's a confessional booth going in and out when y'all read it out of here. I'm thinking, yep, I can't help you with those sins, but you just told me you've been wicked all week long. So I ain't doing them up now. So okay, I get it. We'll all get to lunch earlier, okay? But I know what people want. When they see that word astonished, they're like, boy, I wish you'd be more like Jesus, Pastor. I know what you want. You want me to come in and tell all these stories about how godly I am and how great my life is, and you just be oohed and awed, and you want me to, use the teeth whiteners, and I'll get a pair of skinny jeans, I know. You just threw up in your mouth. But do you know what the word astonished means? See, Mark describes what it was like to sit under Jesus' preaching. Now, write this out, okay? In verse 22, it says, they were astonished when they heard Jesus. That word means to strike with panic and fear. They had never heard teaching and doctrine and authority like that. Literally, to sit under Jesus was to be struck with fear. The Greek word literally means thunderstruck. Why? Because the light of the Word that became flesh, the truth became flesh and walked and spoke among us, and our dark hearts were confronted with Him. That's what it was like to sit under Jesus. You see, just like Sherry's grandfather, it's a warning that if you let the Spirit of God cut that cancerous sin out of your life, there is hope. Amen. When you look at Jesus' you say, well, what about all Jesus' parables and His miracles and all that? Yeah, the same. Do you know the purpose behind the parables? Do you know the purpose behind all the miracles that He did? I hear so many people that say, well, boy, we need this to happen in the church, or we need that to happen in the church. And I'm thinking, y'all missed the point. The point was so that the light of truth could invade our hearts. We could see our dire need for Him because of our depravity. And we'd yield, and He could heal us. The parables, what were they? They were miracles in words. The miracles. Why did He do those? They were, all those healings and things, they were just parables in works. He did the healings to show us the truth. And you're going to see that today. All this that we see here, the disease, the demon-possessed man, all of that, it illustrates the effects of sin on us. Just like my brother that came up to me yesterday, I'd known him on the outside, everything looked good. On the inside, he was dying. For a man of his stature to end up at the end stealing and robbing from all of his friends and families and shooting up heroin, the outside does not portray what goes on the inside all the time. There in verse 24, when you see that demon-possessed man, what the Bible literally tells us is that the man and the demon were infused together. And the reason that when Jesus spoke, he began to cry out is because when light invades darkness, darkness has got to go. But I need you to understand something. That demon-possessed man, people miss the point that Mark's trying to get you to understand. He didn't just wander off the street. Somebody didn't pick him up off the street and say, listen, brother, we love you to come hear the preacher this morning. No. The Bible suggests that he was a regular attender. You see, he was religious. Y'all with me? You don't need white tees, skinny jeans wearing people anymore today. What we need is people who will speak the truth. What you need, you will never be so happy and whole in your life, is when you come in here and let the light invade your darkness and cure you of the spiritual cancer that lives within. You see, when you go out of here and you're mad at me and you're convicted of your sin, what you have done is you walk right back out of here with your sins, and you're ticked that I'd be that bold to call you out on it, when all it is I love you enough to tell you what's killing you. And you take your sin outside with you. My friend, what did you do? Did you stomp on him? I wrapped my arms around him. Every one of you. And me. You know, it's amazing. Every one of you are going to come to a point in your life, if you haven't already, that sin's going to get its grip on you, and you're going to need a brother or sister to help you. Amen. But them lying to you and telling you you're okay won't get her done. I'm going to need it. I got clay feet just like you. And so every time that the truth hits the light, the darkness must flee. I could go on and on about that, but I believe that you kind of understand it, except for this. Understand the state of that man. He was religious. You know, Wednesday night we were having a discussion, and we were talking about the difference between religion and so on, and people, and you know, I was pointing out what Paul was telling the Thessalonians. Somebody said, well, don't you think that it is a legitimate argument that people get mad and leave church because they got their feelings hurt? Only if they are religious. You see, I get my feelings hurt all the time. My wife hurts my feelings. My kids hurt my feelings. There's several of you that need to repent. You've hurt my feelings. Well, I ain't never left God. That's the difference between a relationship with Jesus and religion. This guy was very religious, and then when he was confronted with Jesus, he was exposed. You see, the Bible says literally that the demon was infused inside of his soul. That's why he cried out. The demon was confronted, and this man on the inside, though, on the outside, he had it all together. On the inside, he was spiritually dead like an empty tomb with rotten bones. Dead. He needed a resurrection. Amen. You know, that's the way human nature is. We don't want to see the filthiness of our sins. We dress it up. We talk it down. We even bring it to church sometimes, don't we? But when you dabble with sin, you put yourself in a bad, dangerous place. You say, I don't understand why you preachers stomp around all the time, talk about sin, talk about sin, talk about sin. If I had radioactive material up here and I was giving it out, would anybody want some? Why? Because it's death. Plutonium is death. Sin is death. You can dress it up, you can talk it down, you can bring it to church, it can be your best friend, but it always kills you. Just like that skin cancer of my wife's grandpa. There is no sin that you can control. It always kills you. Some of it you see immediately on the outside. If you've got a person just like my buddy, he on the outside he had it all together. On the inside he was destroyed. Now there's some people we can walk up down the street and find that drugs has destroyed, and the evidence is on the outside. But it doesn't matter. All sin is plutonium. It kills. That's the reason we get red-faced and stomp around, because it kills. You know, people all the time say, well, it's because the glory of God, and God hates it. That's right! If your child was playing with a rattlesnake, would you, what would you do? If you love them, you do whatever you could to get it away from them. That's why God hates it. Because there's never a time when it will not destroy you. And it says that Jesus here puts a muzzle on the demon. See, here's the thing. When Jesus comes to church, and boy, don't we need Jesus to come to church more. All the churches. When he comes to church, people are set free. Amen. Free. We need him in our churches. We need him in our homes. And all these stories are talking about spiritual illnesses. A lot of different things on the outside of these people's lives. But they were all caused by sin. Notice, the first two, one's religious, the second one's moral. Religious and moral hearts are the hardest to penetrate. Oh, yeah. They refuse to bend. They won't bend their will to parents, spouses. They won't yield their will to loved ones. Sadly, most of all, they never will their will to God, to Christ. Secondly, I want you to see our greatest need is to see the heart of the Master of Jesus. Here's the thing. What mattered to Jesus ought to matter to us. What mattered to Jesus ought to matter to us. You know, I find it so interesting that churches split all the time. I find it so interesting that there's always a commotion or a bickering in this church or church down the street. There's always, when this group over here is like, well, I think we ought to do it like this. Well, I think we ought to do it like this. Why don't we just spend time seeing what he wants? What mattered the most to Jesus is this. They're set free. Notice he comes into the mother-in-law here. She was made well. She immediately begins to serve him. She was a homemaker. She was a moral woman. But she was downhill, folks. I want you to think through what that means. Here's the reality of sin. There is no one innocent. Not one. Romans 3:23, for we all have sinned and missed the mark. We were all sinners at one time. But if you've not been saved, you still miss the mark. Here's what that means. It's the hardest thing for a good, moral person to see the reality of their need for Jesus and that they are a sinner. Today, you hear preachers, and I've said it before, hell will be full of good moral people. Hell is full today of good moral people. Hell is full. But what we see in this home is a reality. We all need Jesus because on the inside, what we heard laying there with that fever and her sick and down and close to death, that's what's going on the inside. No matter what you see on the outside, that's what's happening on the inside. And then look at our cities. He says, Capernaum, or our county. What is our county's greatest need? You look at Capernaum here, it was known for its hot water springs. What does that mean? It was a tourist county just like Oklahoma. These 3 lakes, told some of our friends yesterday about the 3 lakes. They're like, I got a bass boat. We're coming, baby, you know. This, by and large, you know, do you have any idea how much of this county is actually owned by people from Atlanta and different people? You see, what was Capernaum? It was a tourist town, kind of like this. And yet, when they heard that the demon-possessed man, they knew him. He was known in town as a good, upright person who attended every Sabbath. And then there's the mother-in-law. She was known as a good, moral person. And when that town heard that Jesus literally set them free, and they saw the difference He made in their lives, it says the whole town came out for Jesus. See, that's why in our vision we're not after other church members. We don't need more religious folk. But when you yield to Christ, all of it, He will transform your life. I don't care which spectrum you come from, the good, religious person, the moral person, or you're blatantly the wickedest person in town. He'll transform your heart, your life, and everybody's going to want a part of that.
That's right. Yep.
When they you know, you don't fool nobody. You could be religious. A lot of you, y'all don't fool me. I've been doing this for 20 years, man. Did it shock me when that guy came up to me and said, listen, man, I went all the way down to heroin. Before I left that church, I loved him, loved his wife, loved his kids, and I told my wife, shame is, man, I cannot get through to him. He just keeps beating this religious drum. It says they were pressing in at the door. It was overwhelming. They all wanted it. You're like, well, and then remember we read that Jesus went to pray and then He went to the next town? You're like, what in the world is up with that? Here's what's going on. When people see the benefit of the gospel, they don't want it. You know, and then when they show up and you say, well, here, you know, salvation's free. Christ paid the price. All you got to do, exchange the life you have, is for the life that He wants to give you. Huh? Yeah. I want to keep what I got, but I want that too. That's why it's a narrow road leading to heaven. You can't take the old with you. It has to die and be buried right here before He gives you the new one. See, that's why I keep talking about surrender. You're like, preacher, I just don't. Why do you keep talking about surrender? Nobody else says it. Their, lack of the whole truth is still a lie. The gate to hell is wide. You can take any little sin you want to take, or as many as you want to take, the old you, and there's plenty of room. Jesus won't give you the freedom and transformation as long as you hold on to the old life. You must die. You give it and surrender it. All these people wanted to come. They pressed in on the door. The whole city came. Why did Jesus go to the next town? Great passage in John 6:26. Jesus answered them and said, most assuredly I say to you, you seek me not because you saw the signs, but because you ate the loaves and were filled. They didn't come to get to know Jesus. They came for the benefits. You understand? That's why I'm so thrilled that we're doing a yard sale that's free to the public. Nothing gets under my skin more than a church asking the lost world to pay for the work we're doing. Nothing. Nothing irritates me more. Here's the other thing, except for one thing. I want you to follow me. You may disagree, but you need to follow the Bible and go on through with me. Why did Jesus go to the next town? Because they wasn't there for Jesus. They were there for the benefit. They were miserable because of what sin had done to them. They wanted cured, but they didn't want to surrender their life. Jesus said, listen, they didn't come out, He says here, the loaves, they came because they ate the loaves. That's why I don't want to invest any of my time and effort into feeding the public unless we're giving them the gospel verbally. Why, preacher? What benefit does it do? Send them to hell with a full belly? See, when Jesus saw that their hearts were turned off and all they were interested in was what they were going to get out of it, not allowing Him to transform them, He moved on. Well, what does that mean, preacher? It means that He had no interest in enabling them. You see, we can feed, and we can feed, and we can feed, and we can feed, and we can feed the public, and if we never take the light and shine in the darkness of their soul, they don't stand a chance, a snowball's chance in hell, of ever seeing themselves get out of the sin that has brought them to the place where they need to come. See, what Jesus is telling us is this: the spiritual is the priority. The physical is the mode. It's the vehicle. It's us showing the love of God so that we earn the right to be able to speak to them. But if you say, well, I am sharing the gospel. I'm sharing it in action. That's the biggest bunch of horse dookie that Satan's ever sold you. And it's the biggest lie that he has in his toolbox. If the truth is not spoken and they do not hear the truth, Romans tells us if there are no people that bring the truth, they will die appreciating your efforts and never knowing how to be transformed. We're going to do a feeding of the 5,000 for Thanksgiving. And next week we're going to ask you, instead of you bringing in all the foods, we've got Golden Corner, we've got other people that are working with us. And they're going to help us get the food at their price. And we're going to ask them to come in. We're going to give 500 boxes of food away at Thanksgiving. But first they have to come in here and hear the gospel. They have to have the opportunity to be set free. So why did He heal them? He healed them in order to gain their attention, to show His love, His attention, or His intentions, so that He might share the truth with them. But then what did He do? Multiple occasions He left, He went on. He left, He went on. Why? Because they had no intention of being healed from their sins. They just liked what He was giving away. Jesus wasn't in the enablement business. The spiritual is always priority over the physical. But it's hard to sit and tell someone how much you love them if you don't show them how much you love them. That's why serving them and feeding them is important. But it's a total waste of an investment if you don't ever tell them how they can be set free. So the third thing is this: our greatest need is to be touched by the Master. This is my favorite. You see, until you've been touched by Jesus, nothing else matters. Absolutely nothing else matters. As you go through, what we're looking at is this story of the leper. Jesus told parables. There were healings. Why did He heal the blind? To show that He can illuminate the darkest of places. Why did He calm the storms? Because He has the strength to bring peace to anything. The raising of the dead, if they're only going to die again, because He was showing that He has power over death. He has life-giving power over death. Why was there the feeding of the 5,000? Because He was showing them that He was their greatest need. He is the bread of life. I mean, without bread, you don't have bread, you die after a few weeks, right? He was greater than physical bread. He's the bread of life. As you look at this leprosy, this man with leprosy, I don't know what you know about leprosy and what Jesus was trying to show here and what Mark wants to convey to us. But leprosy in the Bible is always a symbol of sin. See, that's the reason that we stomp around. We get red-faced and we holler about sin and how bad it is. Because just like plutonium, you don't play with it and it not kill you. Never. But leprosy is outward. You see, what leprosy does, it is an outward physical sign of what is going on in here. The first two people were just as leprous. The regular church attendant, the good moral woman in the community. They outwardly, they were just as leprous on the inside. See, sometimes you can hide your sin and we can't see it. But you know what? It is still just as dangerous. And it still is just as deadly. But leprosy shows us on the outside, it was always a symbol of sin. What's really going on the inside? Here's the leper. Luke goes into much more detail about this occurrence, this encounter with the leper. And I want you to listen to me carefully because it's incredible what Jesus is teaching. Luke tells us that this man was consumed with leprosy. We don't have this type of leprosy today. The leprosy of today is different from the leprosy of the Bible. Okay? Let me describe for you how leprosy comes on. When a person in the Bible time came down with this disease, it started by them feeling a little bit tired. They just felt a little tired that day. The next symptom that would arise is their joints would begin to get sore. And then from there, a little white spot would form on their skin somewhere. Those little white spots would harden into nodules, little white nodules. And they would begin to go all over their body. And those nodules would turn from white to pink. And they would begin to appear everywhere until finally their whole face was covered with those white knots. To their appearance, they were described as they would look like a lion. Their face would be so disfigured. It would begin to cover their vocal cords. When they breathed, they would begin to wheeze. Their voice would be raspy. Their hair would lose all of its color and it would turn white. And inch by inch, their body would begin to rot. As they walked, their feet would leave putrid, rotten spots. Their fingers, their toes would begin to fall off. They'd lose all, their nervous system was destroyed. Therefore, they would lose the feeling in their limbs. Leprosy, as it was described by historians, is the closest thing to a walking corpse that you can imagine. But here's what's interesting. The average leper lived in that condition for 9 years. One of the worst things about leprosy was the social rejection. They were banished from their village. They had to live on the outskirts away from everybody. They would never, if you were diagnosed with leprosy, you would never see your family again, your wife, your children, your mother, your father. Never again from the time you were diagnosed would you ever see any of your loved ones ever again. And the Bible said that they had to tear their clothes, grow out their hair, and everywhere they walked, they would have to cry out, unclean, unclean. If you were caught walking anywhere in the sight of another living human, and you didn't cry out, unclean, unclean, you were immediately stoned to death. That was the biblical law. You see, there's no picture in the Bible that more clearly describes what sin really does to us on the inside. What sin internally does to us, leprosy externally shows the results. The Israelites first contracted leprosy in Egypt. That's where they first got this disease, the land of sin and wandering. It actually came out of Eden. Every leper is a literal walking sermon. See, it's the truth about sin's ugliness. Leprosy is. It's the truth about sin's terminal effects, its deadliness. See, Satan doesn't want you to know about the effects of sin. He'd rather you not know. Society always paints a pretty picture of sin. We label it with more palatable names, like affairs, alternate lifestyles. But when you look at a leper, you see the reality of what sin does to us. You say, why does God hate sin? Why are you Baptists so mean and you're all the time talking about sin? Because you will get spiritual leprosy. It kills you. Destroys you. And here's this leper. Jesus is moving. He's leaving town. He's about to go out. And remember, the leper, he starts crying out for Jesus. But before he can even get close to Jesus, the whole town is assembled in one place. Can you put this in your mind for a second? They're all assembled in one place. And Jesus is leaving town. And here comes the leper. He knows this is my one shot. I have no other hope. And here he comes through town screaming, unclean, unclean, unclean. And when he gets in hearing distance of Jesus, he cries out desperately for hope. And he's had 9 years to rot and live and have everything that is anything in his life taken from him. And he says, Jesus, and what he's saying is, God, if you loved me, I wouldn't be in this kind of predicament to begin with. God, you're my last chance, my only hope. I don't know what to do. He's looking. He's been for 9 years, and everybody else is living their life, and he's over here rotting. And finally, in desperation, he says, God, I guess you despise me, you hate me, or I wouldn't be in this condition. God, if you will. Jesus says, I will.
Hallelujah.
See, it doesn't matter where you are today or what your situation is. You might be the most moral person in you, or the most religious person in you, but you're just as rotten as the leper. You might be the leper here this morning, but he will. Listen to the life they live. Leviticus 13. The leprous person who has the disease shall wear torn clothes and let their hair of their heads hang loose, and he shall cover his upper lip and cry out, unclean, unclean. He shall remain unclean as long as he has the disease. Look up here. Here's the significance. There was no cure. No one was ever cured from it. It was a death sentence. But here's what I love. This man was clean. You see, remember the conscience. You remember the preaching. You remember the conviction. Brother, when you come and sit in service and you're convicted about anything I say, you better stand up and shout and run the house, because God's trying to prevent leprosy in your life. But see, we all have this notion that we want to come in and be told how good we are and how great we are, and you want me to be good and great, and I'm sorry, I'm just not going to lie to you. You know, my wife tells the truth anyway. But until we allow the spiritual surgeon to come in and cut it away, we have no hope. One woman described it, she said it's monstrous to behold, talking about when somebody preaching, her feeling conviction. She said it is monstrous to be told that you have a heart as sinful as the common wretches that crawl the earth. This is highly offensive and insulting, and I cannot but wonder that your ladyship should relish any sentiments so much as variance with high rank and good breeding. The less we know anything is wrong with us, the worse spiritual leper we are. If we shout, I'm okay, she said, we're the most rotten. See, that's sin. It causes you to wonder, does God really want me free and healed? And the devil will tell you you're not worth it. But notice Jesus' compassion. It says he was moved with compassion. See, we need the heart of God. See, that brother, I watched him when I went to that wedding, and I noticed the same brother that embraced me and hunted with me and fished with me, raised our kids together. When I went to this side of the room, he went to that side of the room. When I went over here, he went over there. I knew what that was about. And I thought, brother, I shall not cast the first stone. We need to put down the stones and start touching the lepers in our community. See, that's the heart of God. But see, This is truly how Jesus feels about the thief, the adulterer, the fornicator, the drug addict, the homosexual. He loves you. He just wants to set you free of that spiritual cancer. See, we have to go out of these walls and begin to touch lepers. Can you imagine? No one had touched this man for 9 years. But think this way. Think this. He hadn't touched his wife, his parents, his children. He hadn't even seen his priest in 9 years. Do you understand what a hopeless situation he was in? His family was stripped away. He was in essence dead walking. And even the priest couldn't come around him. So what spiritual hope did he have? Look up here for a second. If you don't get up off your rump and get out of this church and get out to this community and begin to care, not about their reputation, not about their choices, not about who they are, who you are, what chance do they have? Your Christianity doesn't go beyond an event on a calendar just on Sunday. You probably are a spiritual leper also. See, here's the interesting thing. The moment that Jesus touched this leper, he was ceremonially unclean. That's what the Bible means, though, in 2 Corinthians 5:21. For he made himself, who knew no sin, to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God. Here's this man for 9 years, no human contact. For 9 years, he'd not been able to kiss his little girl. For 9 years, he'd not been able to take the hand of his wife. For 9 years, he had no contact with another living soul. And in verse 2, it says that Jesus cleansed him. What does that mean? It means his toes came back. His hair regained its color. His eyebrows were turned black again. Here's my only question to you. Are you willing to touch the lepers? There's a twist, kind of a funny thing here. You say, I wonder if Jesus had a sense of humor. Oh, he did. Did you notice what he said in verse 45? He said, listen, don't go tell anybody, but that's not the significant part. He said, take the offering to the priest. Did y'all hear me? Since the day Moses penned this, that when a leper was cleansed, he had to take 2 birds and take it for an offering. No priest had ever seen birds from a leper. No leper had ever been cured. Can you imagine the priest when the leper knocked on the door? Like, hey man, look, I'm the leper. Here's my birds. I need you to do the offering. The priest passed out. Why? He did. Because the Bible requires the priest to go to the leprosy colony and verify it. Never had been a priest ever. Never had seen a cured leper. See, if you're here this morning and you've been told you're a leper all your life and know that there's no hope for you, He can and He will. Amen. But the sweetest part is this. You know what's significant about that offering? He took his 2 birds to the priest. The offering consisted of the priest taking one of the birds and killing it and draining its blood into the water. Then he would take the other bird and he would take the water mixed with blood and pour it over that bird. And then he set it free. You see, Jesus was the bird that went to the cross and died, and shed his blood. And his blood can be applied to you. You can fly free. Amen. Would you bow your heads this morning? Let me ask you this morning. I don't know your background. I don't know where you're from. You might be religious. You might be a member of this church. But have you ever truly known, ever truly had your life transformed? You may be here and you may have been known through the community and you're a great moral person. But have you ever truly been set free, transformed, a new life? Not a moral life, a new life. Maybe you're here and you say, man, I'm a leper. Pastor, you don't know how wicked, how horrible, and the miserable things that I have done in life. It's all right. He can and He will set you free. So what do I got to do? I want you to hear me very closely. I'm going to lead you through a prayer. But just repeating that prayer, that don't work. All I'm doing is telling you how to start a conversation with God. And what you're doing is, from your heart, you're going to cry out to Him. And He's listening this morning, and you're going to say, listen, God, I need to be changed, healed, set free, transformed. And God, I can't do it. I've tried religion. I've tried morality. God, I'm in a shape that I don't know what to do. But God, I give you my horrible, messed up life. And if you'll do that this morning, you know what He'll do? He'll take the blood and He'll apply it to you. And you'll be the one that flies free. Why don't you do that right now? Just cry out to His heart. And say something like, Father, God, you know my heart. God, you know my spiritual condition. God, the very best that I know how, I'm asking you to change me, to transform me. God, I give you this life. I give you total control. In Jesus' name, amen. This morning we're going to stand and we're going to sing and we're going to praise the one who set us free. And if He set you free, you come up here because we want to celebrate together. Maybe He's laid on your heart that you have been set free and you need to be baptized so that you can tell everybody. Maybe you want to come and begin the process of joining our church and be a part of those that care about the lepers in our community. You come as God lays it on your heart this morning.
Come out of silence from wherever you've been. Come broken-hearted, let rescue begin. Come find your mercy, oh sinner, come near. Earth has no sorrow, the heaven can heal. Earth has no sorrow, the heaven can heal. Amen. So lay down your burdens. Lay down your shame. All are broken. Lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurt. Lay down your heart. Come as you are. There's hope for the hopeless and all those who stray. Come sit at the table. Come taste His grace. There's rest for the weary, a rest that endures. Earth has no sorrow, the heaven can cure. Lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All are broken, lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come home. there's joyful moment. Oh, sinner, be still. Earth has no sorrow, heaven can heal. Earth has no sorrow, heaven can heal. Yeah. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All my broken, lift up the way.
The books that you ordered have come in, and before you go say anything unnice to Miss Sonia, when we started the home groups, I wasn't going to get your books. You're adults. I was going to let you get them yourself. Her, out of a courtesy, decided to take her on that role of task, like she got nothing to do, and get them for you. So there are copies to the first chapter out there, and so God willing, and the mail will run. You'll get the books next week, okay? So see her. There's copies. She copied the first chapter for you. So go out and see her. If you're not in a home group, my home group is still open at 5 o'clock. I may have told you something 5:30. At Roddy Campbell's house. You don't know where Roddy lives, you come tell me, or come see me, I'll tell you. The other thing is, next Saturday, we're going to have our free yard sale. And so, by the way, we need folks here at the church to donate, but Gloria wanted me to know that it is open to y'all too. So the church members, if you come, see something you want, there. But we want you to pray about coming and donating and giving so we can reach show the community we love them, have the opportunity to tell them about the love of Christ. Here's the third thing. You heard me say, in Thanksgiving, we're going to be doing the feeding of the 5,000. I need you now to begin praying about that. Golden Corner and several other ministries here in Oconee were gracious enough. They're going to help us turn whatever dollar you give. It's going to be several $1,000s, or $3,000 or $4,000, something like that, to put 500 meals together for them to come in and us to be able to give them the meal for Thanksgiving and share the gospel with them. So we're going to ask you to give the money because they're able to take a dollar you give and turn it into 5. Wow. But we need you to be praying about what you'll give. How many families you want to adopt. Above and beyond your tithes. My family are going to be praying about it. We tithe today. We'll continue to tithe. We're going to give an offering, and we're going to let you know as soon as we get a total on it. It's going to be a sacrifice for us. And if we have to go to the bank and borrow it out of savings, or take it out of savings, that's what we're going to do to reach and touch some lepers that need to be touched in our community. God bless you. Have a great day. Lay down your burden.